welcome everybody. I'm just going to welcome Captain Abballe here, and he's going to show us and talk about fire safety. So take it away.
Okay, well, as I've just found out earlier this morning, that this one presentation is not going to be just Toronto-centric, but I believe it's going across the country. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are, because it could be in the afternoon out in the out east, or it could be in the earlier morning out west. So I am Carlo Abballe. I work for Toronto Fire Services. I work in the public education department. It's one of the divisions of Toronto Fire. Prior to that, I was a fire inspector for many years, and prior to that, I was a building inspector for many years. I do love my job now because I'm going out, I'm meeting and connecting with people to try and promote fire safety. We want everyone to be safe. So I've put together a lengthy PowerPoint presentation. Now, lengthy. I am going to be going through the videos, the slides relatively quickly, but they're very, very graphic, and they have images, so you can process them relatively quickly. But at any time, if you have a quick question, please send text over to Crystal, and then that way there she can mitigate it. And if it's just a quick answer, I can resolve it right then and there. But if it's something which is a little bit more involved, I'm going to probably say we're going to put a pin in that for now, and we're going to summarize it again at the later. And then we also have a whole bunch of question and answer period at the end of this as well. So without further ado, I'm also joined by two other public educators as well. My acting captain, Josephine Park. She's my right-hand person. She takes care of my office better than I do, actually. And also another public educator who's also recently joined us. His name is Brian Walker, who also joins us from operations, an actual true firefighter as well. Anyways, so I'm going to be starting the presentation now. I'm going to click on the share screen. Hopefully this works. And do you see the fire safety in the home screen? Excellent, great. So again, I am Carlo Abballe. I'm with Toronto Fire Services. And basically what we want to do, we want to make sure that we maintain fire safety in the home. The way which we do that is that we do it through three different main methods. We do it through prevention, we do it through detection, and we do it through escape. Prevention is trying to avoid the fires. Detection is to alert us whenever we do end up having a fire. And then if we do have a fire, how do we get out? These are the key pillars, the three pillars that we have to abide by in order to make sure that everything is safe. So let's get started. Prevention is the best line of defense against the start of fires. The way in which we do that is that we end up making sure that we can avoid fires. Now, what is the number one cause of home fires? This is what we found from our statistics in the province of Ontario. We found that unattended cooking is the primary cause of home fires. People are always cooking. Sometimes you're very, very tired. It happened to me. You know, I put some fries on the stove and I thought I wasn't really tired, but then I was crashed out, and next thing you know, my cabinets are on fire. So it happens to everyone. So how can we end up taking care of that? Basically, we want to make sure that you stay inside the kitchen when you're frying, broiling, grilling, or broiling food. We basically want to make sure that you look while you cook. If you keep that simple mantra, that simple message, then you'll know. Because all of us get distracted. You get a ring at the doorbell, you walk away for 20 minutes, and next thing you know, you end up having a fire. So always pay attention. If you're going to be away from your stove for more than 10 to 15 minutes, shut off the actual stove, remove the heat energy from what you're cooking, because you can always reheat it later. But it's a lot more difficult when you have to replace your kitchen cabinets due to the fire. So other items which we have for cooking safety as well is whenever you have pots and pans on the stove, it's better to turn your pot handles in when they're on the stove top. That avoids you knocking over a pan inadvertently when you're passing by. Also, avoid cooking with loose fitting clothing, as you can see in the center graphic. That center graphic there shows like when you're, say for example, you're wearing your bathrobe and it may hang over the heating element or over your gas stove, and the next thing you know, you yourself are on fire. We want to avoid that when we end up doing that. And also make sure that you keep things away from the stove top that can catch fire. Cereal boxes, plastic packaging, whatever it ends up coming. towels, curtains if your stove is close to a window. We want to make sure that we can mitigate and eliminate the possibility of fires that start from flame impingement. So, what would you do if you end up having a small grease fire in a pan? The best thing which we recommend is that every single time when you're cooking, whatever pot you take, please take out the matching lid or even a metal cookie sheet, which you can use to cover the pan if you ever end up having a fire. By putting a lid on it and turning off the heat, you're depriving two things that allow a fire to occur. You're depriving it of oxygen, so the fire will suffocate, and you're depriving it from heat, which will continue the burning process. By eliminating those two, the fire will go out. Also, next to that, never move the pan because you don't know how hot that pan is. And if you move the pan to the side and the lid pops off, the fire may reignite, or even worse, you can end up spreading the hot oils or the greases onto you, or it may spread it to other places, and you could also get injured. So here's an example of a video which we end up having, warning you when you're not supposed to put water on a grease fire. And the results are pretty dramatic.
No, what happens is a lot of people throw water on it. They don't know you should never throw water on a grease fire. We're going to actually see what happens when we throw a half a cup of water on a grease fire.
So did that video work okay for everyone? Did that work out all right? Did everyone see it? Excellent. Now I'm going to play the video one more time because I'm going to highlight something which specifically happened to me. And this is something interesting. When I hit play, I want you to notice that when the lid comes off of the pan,
a lot of people throw water on it. They don't know you should never.
Really, I want people to look over who actually started the fire. In this one specific case, no one actually started the fire, but I want you to pay attention to it. I'm going to snap my fingers or clap my hands exactly when the fire starts. I'm going to come back to that point. So here we go. Sorry, wrong one.
No, what happens is a lot of people throw water on it. They don't know you should never throw water on a grease fire. We're going to actually see what happens when we throw a half a cup of water on a grease fire.
Now, I brought up this one specific point because no one actually lit that fire. What a lot of people don't really realize is that when you have hot oil on top of a stove and you leave it on there for a pretty long period of time, oil will auto-ignite. It will ignite on its own. This is another reason why we always have to pay attention and we look while we cook, because even if you don't put a flame to that oil to ignite it, it may start on its own. So that's another reason why we should also end up paying attention and look while we cook, and also make sure you have the appropriate way to put out the fire by turning off the heat and covering it with a lid. If you're actually baking and you have a fire within your oven, the best thing to do is just to shut off the heat and make sure you do not open the door. Again, same concept. The oxygen inside the actual oven will deplete, and with the removal of energy, the fire will go out. Now, there's also another thing which also occurs. What's the number one cause of fatal fires? Unfortunately, this is what happened in a common thing, and that's for smoking-related fires. Unfortunately, sometimes people, they tend to fall asleep with their actual while they're smoking, or they're tired, and then unfortunately we end up having the statistics which we're trying to eliminate. So for smoking fire safety, we want to make sure that people place cigarettes in an ashtray. Do not throw the cigarettes over the balcony. Do not throw the cigarettes outside where they can easily catch fire. We've seen a lot of evidence on the media recently about all the fires that occur across the country in forests and stuff, and that can be done by, inappropriate camping, or it could be just someone flicking a cigarette when they're driving down the road. The key thing is that whenever we're smoking, make sure you put it in an approved ashtray and you extinguish it completely to make sure that it will not spread. Matches and lighter safety. We know we end up having lighters that end up being there, and we want to make sure that kids understand that matches and lighters are tools. They're not toys. They're not what kids are supposed to play with. So if you can, move them to a location where the kids do not have ready access to it. That's something which we can teach our kids in order for them to end up making sure that they are safe. Electrical fire safety. We want to make sure that you do not overload your extension cords in your wall sockets. Usually, if you have something which you see in the images which you end up having here, you're way overloading your circuit. It's best to always end up buying a power bar that ends up having an interrupted circuit on it. I believe there's almost like a reset and a fuse that's located on it that you can reset on the power bars. Make sure they're ULC certified and listed. And then also, if you find that any of the cables or the extension cords are hot to touch, or they smell, or they're doing any form of crackling, obviously you're overloading the circuit. It's best to take it, plug it in a different outlet, or use a different extension location from another location to make sure you're not overloading your circuits. Candle safety. I know candles make a wonderful ambiance and we like to have them around, especially with the wonderful scents. But whenever you go out of your room, blow out the candle whenever you leave your room or your home or whenever you go to bed. Last thing which we want is a breeze to move the curtains over, and next thing you know, you end up having a fire that's starting from the simple little candle that occurs. Laundry safety. Whenever you're doing your laundry, it's best to also check to make sure that you're not overloading your lint filter. The dryer is a device that generates a lot of heat, and if the lint trap gets filled and blocked, there might be a possibility that you might end up having a laundry fire that starts because the heat cannot exit the dryer as it's designed. The lint filter there is to stop the lint from accumulating inside the exhaust duct of your dryer to go outside. So if you can make sure that that's clean, then you can end up having a safer use of your laundry device. Heating safety. We know there's a lot of cold months coming up. It's not today because Toronto, we're hitting kind of like 43 degrees with the humidex, but there are some days we end up having minus 20, minus 30. And for that, whenever we end up having heating units, make sure that you give enough space to your heating device. Most heating devices end up having a safety switch on the bottom of the heating unit that if you tip it over, the heating unit will shut off. But it also requires it to be put on a flat level surface in order for that to operate. So put it on a flat level surface. Don't put it near anything that may be combustible. We don't want to start a fire from a heating device. Another thing that's coming to the forefront, and this is something which is happening quite readily in the city of Toronto, is lithium-ion batteries. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that the average household now has anywhere from 25 to 35 lithium-ion batteries, from your cell phone to your laptop batteries to your robotic sweeper robot device to your Dyson vacuum to my DeWalt power tools. Lithium-ion batteries are now at the forefront because they have the ability to charge relatively quickly and they hold their charge for a very long time. Generally, lithium-ion batteries are very, very safe, but there are times when lithium-ion batteries may fail, and we're going to cover that on how we do that now. Why is it a risk? With batteries, what ends up happening is that if the batteries end up being overcharged or they're overheated or they get damaged and the actual barrier within the battery gets compromised or they malfunction, they can do a thing called a thermal runaway. And what that is, it begins to heat itself to higher temperatures until it's combusting and it will explode. It can result in extremely high temperatures, violent cell venting, and smoke and fire. The key elements which you look at is if you see an unusual color, a change in color, if there's too much heat coming off the actual battery itself, if the battery deforms by changing in shape, if something is leaking out of the battery, or noise or damage, these are telltale signs that this battery is not in a good fit. It should be removed from anywhere where you could end up having that. Now, I do have another video, which I'm going to play now, and these are four separate cameras of exactly the same electric mobility device. The upper right-hand corner is an infrared camera. It ends up having the actual temperature as the bike. So I'm going to start to play on this video, and we put an overcharge on this overcharge on this battery just to show what could happen. So because this bike was overcharged by an extra hour and 40 minutes, you can see that the smoke is developing off the bike. And if you take a look at the upper right-hand corner, you can see it's 52, 53 degrees Fahrenheit, but then suddenly it goes to 1100 degrees, and it's very explosive. This is the reason why we have to end up making sure that we use lithium-ion batteries correctly. So I'll go on to the next slide. So how do we use lithium-ion batteries correctly? Well, basically, we should only use the battery and charging cord that came with the device. So if you have a lithium-ion bike, use that charger and that charging cable for that specific device. Same thing goes for your cell phones. Like I've heard some people end up telling me, well, I'm just going to buy um, a charging line from the dollar store. Well, yes, it will work, but there's also a problem with it. See, Apple or Android or whoever made the phone already designed that one specific cable to allow only a certain amount of energy to go into the actual battery in order for it to charge. I've heard some people tell me, well, I'm using this one specific cable on my iPhone, but my iPhone is hot. Why is that? It says, well, if you end up using the correct cable supplied by Apple, again, this is not an endorsement for Apple, but from the manufacturer, they've already done testing to make sure that the battery will not overcharge, to make sure that we're not going to be damaging the battery by overcharging it and depleting it, overcharging and depleting it. Most of the times, all the devices from all the different manufacturers have to end up getting a UL or a ULC certification. That means that they go through all the appropriate checks and balances to make sure that it is safe, right? So again, it all really comes down to, buyer beware when you buy your items. A perfect example, I'm a DeWalt power tool user. I love my DeWalt tools, but if I want to buy a 5 amp hour lithium ion battery, one battery is $137. There's a reason for that, is that the actual battery itself inside has a battery management system to end up making sure that the individual cells do not overcharge and that the battery does not overheat, and it shuts off accordingly. Yes, I can buy an aftermarket battery for $25 or $35, and it will work for me. But do I want to end up putting my life in peril? Me personally, I won't. So the best thing which I can recommend for people is to use the appropriate batteries for their devices. Whenever you're charging items like laptops and devices, place them on hard, flat surfaces. A computer laptop, as an example, ends up having venting fans to end up making sure that the actual computer itself and also the batteries can cool off by the use of the fans. If you place that on a duvet and you're blocking the holes, then you're overheating the actual laptop. And that also has been a problem, which we've seen with lithium-ion items. Then also, finally, regarding e-bikes and scooters, whenever you have them, make sure you keep them away from the exit door. As you've seen in the previous video, the explosion of the battery can be quite violent. And last thing which we want is for that to be right at your exit door, which is obstructing you from leaving. We don't want that to happen. So if you can, store it in a location that's not near your exit door. So also, when you're disposing lithium-ion batteries, do not put directly into the trash. The reason why, all the trash which you take ends up going into a garbage disposal vehicle. And what they do in the garbage disposal vehicle, they tend to crush all the garbage to compact it. That's the last thing which we want to do with a lithium-ion battery, because it'll cause a failure or short. And the next thing you know, you see a garbage truck on fire on the side of the road. So this is the reason why we don't want them going to a battery disposal. Take them to a battery recycling location. Now, I've got a QR code on my specific slide, but that's for the city of Toronto. I would suggest that you get in touch with your municipality to end up finding out what the rules and regulations are and what the safe disposal is for your specific locale. Now, remember, prevention is the first and best defense against fires. So that's one of the three that we're going to be covering. We're almost through it. The other ones are far shorter. So please bear with me. We're going to make through this very, very quickly. If you do have a fire, Detection and early warning will save your life. What do we mean by detection? We mean smoke alarms. Smoke alarms in the province of Ontario have to be installed on every level of your home and generally located outside of each sleeping area. The fire code specifically says you need one on every floor level. New homes being constructed, however, in the province of Ontario, not only require them to be on every floor level, but also in every bedroom and also interconnected. So when one goes off, all go off. This is the newer regulations that are coming through. It may change in your locale. I suggest you get in touch with the fire department to find out what is there. But if you do not have a smoke alarm in every floor level, I strongly suggest that you either have your landlord install it for you, or you should have or if you are the homeowner, have someone install it for you. Again, it's a very, very great device to have. They're relatively inexpensive nowadays, and it's your first line of defense to let you know that there's a fire emergency. You want to be able to know and get out of your home as quickly as possible. We want you to test the smoke alarm at least once a month using the test button. Here's a video that shows how simple it is. You just bring up a broom, push the button, listen for the beep, and you're done. If you can do that monthly, then you'll know at least your smoke alarm is safe. Smoke alarms should have their batteries changed at least once a year. You do not want to run the risk of having your smoke alarm not working. This is a simple video on how you can change your smoke alarm. It's relatively simple. Make sure you install the battery properly. And before you put it up on the ceiling, push the test button and listen for the beep. Smoke alarms should be replaced every 10 years. A lot of people don't know this. Smoke alarms also have a shelf life. The actual sensor within the actual device itself becomes desensitized as the years go on. So if you take a look at your smoke alarms today, you check on the side, there's generally a year or a date saying replace by, and it'll tell you, please replace by 2026 if it's already 6 years old, as an example. No, sorry, 8 years old as an example. So for that, I would suggest that you take a look at it, make sure that it's fine, and make sure that you're well within the time that your battery is, that your smoke alarm is not expired. Smoke alarms also have new features as well. Some smoke alarms have a hush button. So whenever you end up creating, say, for example, smoke from burning toast or a small kitchen fire, you have the ability to hit the hush button on it. And what that will do, that will silence the alarm for a certain amount of minutes, depending on the manufacturer. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 5. If the fire still remains, the smoke alarm will reinitiate. But this is a great way which you can end up making sure you can get rid of the actual noise of the smoke alarm temporarily. There's also other smoke alarms for people who end up having hearing issues. These strobe smoke alarms also end up having a bright strobe light that ends up giving you visual notification in addition to the actual audible. And for the people who end up having problems with hearing, we also have bed shakers. These bed shakers are items that you can attach to an extra device that listens to the smoke alarm noise, and it'll cause a vibration in your pillow while you're sleeping. So that's another way which you can end up waking up in the event if there's a fire emergency. So that pretty much covers everything on smoke alarms. But we're also going to cover something else, and that's carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless, and tasteless gas. What it basically does, it comes into a room or an enclosed space and pushes out the oxygen from that room or space. What that does to us is that it makes us tired, we fall asleep, and then we do not wake up. That is why it's often referred to as the silent killer. Carbon monoxide comes from a variety of different sources, from a car left running in the garage, to propane gas heaters, to a corroded or disconnected heat vent pipe. As you can see on the screen, there's a lot of different options. So the best thing to do is to make sure that you end up having a carbon monoxide inside your home. Again, this is an Ontario regulation. You have to check in with your municipality to make sure what the rules and regulations are. Carbon monoxide poisoning affects you in a lot of different ways. When you breathe in carbon monoxide, you may begin to feel sick from headaches, nausea, dizziness, breathlessness, and in the worst scenarios, worst conditions and scenarios, you actually collapse and you also have loss of consciousness. At that time, it's very, very serious. In Toronto, we recommend that everyone, whenever they're experiencing these scenarios or whenever their carbon monoxide goes off, to immediately call 911. We will arrive, we bring our carbon monoxide detection, and we end up making sure that we take different levels throughout the home to find out where the cause of it is, and also to eliminate the problem, to advise you where the problem is so you can get the proper repair done. Carbon monoxide alarms are usually best to be installed outside sleeping areas and should be tested once a month. Carbon monoxide alarms can be installed on the wall or the ceiling. This is different from smoke alarms. Smoke alarms detect smoke, and we want them to detect as quickly as possible. That's why we install them on the ceiling. But carbon monoxide is 0.98 the density of air. So as carbon monoxide flows through the home at the same as the oxygen as going through your home, there's not really a need for it to be located on the ceiling. It could also be plugged into the wall, or on the ceiling or on a wall. In high-rise buildings, not all apartments require carbon monoxide alarms. In an indication which you can see here, only apartments that are adjacent to a parking garage or a heating room or a furnace room would have to require the carbon monoxide alarms. But if you have any doubt, please get in touch with your landlord and they can check that for you. If you don't have a carbon monoxide alarm, then you should ask your landlord to install it. But if it is your own home and you're taking care of it, you should go out, buy one, and have it installed for yourself. Remember, this early detection can save your life. So now, just to recap, we talked about all the different hazards of fire safety and how we can prevent them. We've now covered how we can detect if there's a fire inside your actual place, and basically to get early notice that something's going wrong within your home. But now we're going to be dealing with, okay, you have a fire. So what do you have to do to escape? Now, what we see on TV and movies is completely different than what we end up experiencing in real life. As you can see from these images, and as you see most of the times when you watch on TV, you see a firefighter walking around having a conversation with his mask off, for a good 20 minutes before, he tries to save someone and there's an overlong discussion. This is not the reality. The reality is that smoke is thick, dark, poisonous, and you cannot see through it. Our firefighters are trained with blackout masks to make sure that they can end up navigating a fire by crawling around on the floor and searching for people in a real fire. This is what a real fire looks like. So in this one specific case, our firefighters are wearing protective equipment. They're wearing self-contained breathing apparatus. They have the ability to enter a fire in these conditions. You as a homeowner will not survive in these conditions. This is the reason why we want people to get out and stay out as quickly as possible. So how much time do you think you might have? Now, normally I put that out. I ask people to give me, a sample, but I've got a video that's going to cover to show everything from when the smoke alarm starts to exiting the home and to actually get outside. This one specific video has been put together and we've used it in many different PowerPoint presentations. Unfortunately, it's based on a true story. So I'm going to run the video and it shows you how quickly fire can develop.
What you are seeing now is the alcove area in the living room of the simulation home.
This
The
one
kitchen is on the right side of the frame and the front door is on the left. A fire is being ignited on the wicker chair, which was determined to be the point of origin of the fire.
They
The
created
equipment
this.
hanging from the ceiling are the heat sensors installed to monitor the temperature of the room at various levels. The smoke is now pouring from the ignition point and a small flame is developing. The wicker chair is now burning.
Sorry. Apologize for that.
What you are seeing now is the alcove area in the living room of the simulation home. The The kitchen is on the right side of the frame and the front door is on the left. A fire is being ignited on the wicker chair, which was determined to be the point of origin of the fire. The equipment hanging from the ceiling are the heat sensors installed to monitor the temperature of the room at various levels. The smoke is now pouring from the ignition point and a small flame is developing. The wicker chair is now burning.
This fire was a reproduction of an existing fire that occurred. As you can see, the flame is developing quite
The
quickly.
ground floor smoke alarm activates. Remember, there was no ground floor smoke alarm in the actual fire. The fire is still in its early stages, but you can see that the toxic smoke layers are already beginning to accumulate at the ceiling level. If the occupants were alerted to the fire at this point, they would have had more time to safely escape. In a fire, every second counts. There is no time to spare.
When watching the video, please also make note of the temperature of the smoke in the fire.
The smoke alarm on the second floor now activates. This is the alarm the family heard. At this stage, they are getting out of bed, gathering their children, and preparing to escape. These are the fire conditions that the family would have faced as they came down the stairs. At this point, the temperature in the room at the shoulder level is approximately 40 degrees Celsius. Watch closely what happens to the fire conditions when the front door opens and more oxygen is introduced into the room. At this stage, we believe the mother and 3-year-old are now exiting the front door. In the confusion of the growing fire, the father and older boy became separated and the father barely escaped with his life. Unfortunately, the child had run back up the stairs and perished in the fire. Within 30 seconds of the door opening, the temperature on the first and second floors soared to over 700 degrees Celsius. The fire is spreading rapidly throughout the room as flaming paint is dropping onto the furnishings. The room is rapidly approaching its peak temperature of 900 degrees Celsius. All of the materials in the room are now burning, and in less than 3 minutes, we have reached flashover conditions. No one can possibly survive these conditions. You can hear the front window shattering. These are the conditions that the firefighters faced as they entered the burning building in attempts to rescue the young victim.
Unfortunately, this is a very, very sad story in which the son, when was separated from his dad, went back upstairs and he perished in the fire. So what we are trying to do here is to end up making sure that we end up establishing an escape plan. Now, it could be something just as very simple as to plan out a map of each level of your home and practice how to end up getting out. This is to review what to do with your family when the smoke alarm goes off, how to end up crawling low on the floor to get out, and where to meet outside. The key thing is to get out, stay out, find your meeting place, and call 911. And once you're out, we want you to stay out and call 911. Once you have an established place where you can all meet, then everyone knows that their family is safe and you don't have to run back into the home searching for your loved ones or your pets. Most of the times pets, they tend to leave and go out of the home quicker than we are because they realize that the fire is there. But if in the event that they do not come out, they tend to go and hide in the places where whenever they're scared, they tend to find a spot where they like to hide whenever they're afraid. And the key thing is to get out, let your firefighter know, and they will try and get your pet if they can. But the key thing is to save yourself. Now, This is in a specific house. As you can see on the photos on the left-hand side of the screen, these buildings are of combustible construction. That means that the walls, floors, and roof are made of wood timber or wood products. This is dramatically different than when you end up having in a high-rise building, or they could even be low-rise buildings, but it's buildings of non-combustible construction. The big difference is that the floors, supporting walls, and columns are actually made out of concrete. This will dramatically change the way which you end up exiting, as what we've seen in the first example. In a combustible home, get out, stay out, call 911. I can't emphasize that as much as I can. But in a building with non-combustible construction, like a high rise, you have the option to stay or go. So what do? In a high rise building, the concrete floors and concrete walls actually give you a 2-hour fire resistance rating. So if you live on the 7th floor and there's a fire on the 5th floor, as an example, it'll take 2 hours for each to breach the 6th floor, and then another 2 hours to breach the 7th floor. And then on your floor itself, the concrete walls encapsulate you in concrete with your fire rated door to end up making sure that you're safe. The two photos which I end up having here, the photo on the left shows an actual condo unit that was completely decimated by fire. You can't even tell that what the item right in front of the firefighter is an actual stove that got completely demolished. Whereas the other photo on the right-hand side, that is the adjacent unit that was separated by a concrete wall that wasn't even affected by fire. So because we end up having this compartmentized space within your high rise, you have the option to stay or go because the homes are built differently. Also, in a high rise building, there's an overall building fire alarm, there's exit signs, there's heat detectors, and self-closing devices on the doors. This makes a high rise or non-combustible building safer than a regular standard home. Never prop open the suite or stairwell doors. So now that we have this, how do we do an escape plan from a high rise? There are two possibilities in a high rise building whenever there's a fire emergency. Either one, you have a fire inside your high rise unit that is within your specific suite, or you have the fire alarm ringing in the building. If the fire is in your high rise suite or unit, everyone in your unit must leave immediately and call 911 from outside. You leave your unit, close the door behind you, and practice using the stairwells to go down to go outside. As you leave your floor, pull the manual pull station. That's the little red box which you see on the left-hand side of your screen. And that puts the whole building into alarm, alerting people of the fire condition. Then go down the stairs and get outside. Elevator shafts should not be used because they can be filled with poisonous smoke, and never use an elevator in a fire emergency. If you happen to encounter smoke in the hallway, you can crawl low and use the other exit door. And usually every floor has a minimum of 2 exits, or you can go back and protect in place. If you cannot get out, you can protect in place within your unit. You close the door and cover the vents and cracks around the door with a towel or duct tape and keep smoke out and call 911. Again, this is what the City of Toronto is mandating for high-rise buildings. This is what we are telling our public, but it may vary from the municipality where you are at. I would suggest you find out what your local fire service wants you to do and get information from them. But this is what we do because we end up having non-combustible buildings that allow us to do that. If you don't leave immediately, you can protect in place, and here are some samples on how you tape your door to make sure you keep the smoke out of your unit. By practicing your escape plan, it ensures that you and your family are safe. So please practice prevention, detection, and escape in your home today. So by following these 3 main methods, we can end up making sure that everyone is safe from fire. So for some extra tips, For police, ambulance, and fire, please call 911. Toronto Fire Services have operators that access over 240 different languages. So we're here to help in any way, shape, or form. So I've got a couple of trivia questions, and then later on, we're going to open it up to questions. So first one is, what do you do if you have a small grease fire in a pan? You put a lid on it. How often should you test your smoke alarm? You should test it at least once a month. How often should you change your smoke alarm batteries? At least once a year. Where should carbon monoxide alarms be installed? On the wall or the ceiling. What to do if there's a fire in your high-rise unit? Leave immediately, pull the fire alarm pull station, go outside and call 911. And finally, what are your two options if you hear your fire alarm building in your high-rise? You have the option to stay or go. So this is the summary of our PowerPoint presentation. Do we have any questions?
So Crystal, you're going to have to see if anybody has any questions. I have a few here.
Okay.
Okay, so the first one with regard to fire blankets.
Mm-hmm.
So that we've seen this on television.
And it's all over Facebook, social media.
And it's all over Facebook and social media and all that stuff. Is it better to use on your person to escape a fire or to cover a small fire, such as an electrical fire?
Well, my personal opinion on this, I do not subscribe to the use of fire blankets, and there's a very, very simple reason why. One, most of the fires can be easily mitigated on a stove, as an example, by putting a lid on top of the pan and also shutting off the heat energy, and then the fire will go out on its own. If it's an electrical fire, you can either shut off the breaker or you can unplug the devices to end up making sure that it doesn't overheat. The reason why I'm not a fan of fire blankets is for one simple reason. I know they're on YouTube and social media, but as I said, like for lithium-ion batteries items and practically everything fire related, everything is generally tested by UL or ULC. That means that the one specific blanket or the device is generally tested in a way to make sure that it will fulfill its duty in order to protect you from fire safety. Most fire blankets, which I see, and I've seen quite a few of them on the actual advertisements, do not have any certification on them whatsoever. Now, let me give you another tiny slight little side pause here, and I'll show you how dramatic it'll be. In restaurants in the city of Toronto, whenever you end up having curtains or fabrics hanging on the wall for decoration, it is a requirement that those fabrics have to be fire treated with a certain chemical to make sure they do not propagate fire spread. In order to do that for a set of curtains, the cost is upward from anywhere from $500 to $700. Now, that is truly fire-rated material. The stuff which you may or may not buy off of Amazon usually is nowhere near that price point, and nowhere is it certified. So my humble opinion on this is I wouldn't want to rely on this fire safety blanket to get out. Now, there are two questions were posed towards this. One, should you use it to extinguish a fire? I just answered that saying, well, the blanket's not really certified, so no. And second, should I use it to cover myself to get out of a fire? Well, as you've seen, smoke alarms are very, very, very sensitive. They're sensitive on purpose. They're there to wake you up even when you don't even see the smoke. It's designed that way on a reason. Early evacuation and notice. We want you to be woken up in the middle of the night by a very, very loud alarm and to get out as quickly as possible, or at least go and see what's happening where the fire is occurring and get out and stay out. That's the reason why those alarms are very, very sensitive. So that will mitigate the need for covering yourself with a blanket, which may or may not be certified on the way out. So hopefully that will give my answer toward fire blankets. Me personally, I wouldn't recommend them.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. That's brilliant. I have a couple of others, but Crystal, does anybody else have any questions? See anything? Otherwise, I'll go on and ask the next one. Okay. Can we ask the fire department to inspect our home or rental properties?
Yes, you can. At any time, you can end up calling your municipality and you can end up asking for a fire inspection. Now, there's a little bit of a caveat there. When you end up having a fire inspection on your home, there may or may not be a charge associated with it. It depends on your municipality. Some municipalities may waive the fee, some charge a fee. I know the City of Toronto does, but then there's also an extra thing too. If we say, for example, we come out and we end up seeing that there's a deficiency from a fire-related matter on your property, though it's the homeowner's responsibility to make sure that the building is safe. So we will give a notice and we have to end up making sure that the notice is abided by. Because since we're the authority having jurisdiction and we came and we visited your home, and let's say, for example, that you're missing a smoke alarm on 2 of the 3 floor levels, your first floor, second floor, and basement, then we will give a notice to say, please install these smoke alarms as soon as possible. We usually give a bit of time for them to comply, and then we'll come back and re-inspect. But if you do not comply, then unfortunately, then we're going to have to end up taking a different action and may lead legally to make sure that it's done safe. Because when we come out and we inspect it, and if we see something deficient, we have to notify the owner to end up making sure that the place is safe. Again, we're not here for the fines. We're here to make sure that all the places are safe for people to live. We want to make sure you're safe, your tenants are safe, whoever is safe. Whenever you end up having a doubt about fire safety, please call us and we will come out and we will inspect. That is what we do.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really good to know and great advice. I have one other question. Can lighters spontaneously ignite?
Generally, no. And I'll tell you the reason why. It's known as having a competent ignition source. What a competent ignition source is that you end up having a fuel, and then you also have to end up having a spark next to that fuel with the right mixture in order for it to create the flame. So if you notice with most lighters, there's usually a small little piezo, or they used to have the old, which you rotate your thumb to cause the flint to create the spark. If there's no spark, you can end up having the flammable fuel within the lighter, and it will not ignite on its own, unless if you're in 800-degree temperature, right? Like if you're happen to be taking a tour on the sun, then yes, it will automatically combust because of the temperature. But generally, in regular room temperatures, they will not automatically combust. That's the reason why the lighters are designed that way. They require some sort of a click in order to create a spark, in order to ignite the flammable liquid within. Without that clicking, no, it will not automatically combust.
Fantastic.
I feel better about that now.
Okay, good. Okay, so is there any other, I know Crystal put up a question. If there's any questions, you can drop them into the chat, or I'm wondering if I can see anybody else here. What is going on here? Let's see. Janet, you got anything? Any questions or anything? Again, I can't see you very well, so I'm on my iPad. So if there's nothing there from anybody else. Oh, Carol's got another
If
one.
there's a fire, like if your room's on fire and you got it, and you can still get close up, can you like turn on, like, how I have the sprinkler, the hose hooked up? Can I start standing outside and trying to hose down the house from the outside before the fire department gets there?
Well, yeah, I did hear that. Yeah, you could try, but the amount of volume that you're going to have out of your hose really isn't going to help out that much. As you can see in the fire in the video, which we had, picture this, put your hands together, right? And then every 30 seconds, double it in size. So Imagine you have a ball inside your hand. That's the initial flame. In 30 seconds, it doubles, and then doubles, and then doubles. There's a reason why firefighters end up having the very, very large hose and pumpers that we end up having there. If we show up with the smaller pump, with the smaller thing there, yes, we can do that to mitigate a small fire. But if it's a fully involved house fire, trust me, you won't be able to stand anywhere near the actual house. Usually, the heat will be overwhelming that you have to stand more than 20, 30 feet away without getting affected by the heat. Um, I don't know what else to end up saying on that. Like that's yeah. Get out, stay out, find your meeting place, call 911, and also when the firefighters arrive, let them know, hey, listen, everyone's out of the house and the pets are outside. That way, we know we can immediately start attacking the fire because the first thing which we're going to do, if you tell us that someone's missing, we're going to go in and we're going to try and save them, obviously.
Oh,
So that's another reason why it's so important to have a meeting place and know that everyone's outside.
Very good. Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much. It's a fantastic presentation, Captain Abballe. And again, thank you for presenting, and thank you for the other attendees. Hopefully they got something out of it as well.
Great. I would like to just continue a little bit off. We just have a tiny little bit of time. When we were talking briefly with your specific group, with the Little People of Canada, you're asking, well, how does it end up affecting people who are with dwarfism? I did actually do a little bit of research on it to try and see what I can find. The closest thing which I did find is that in a fire safety plan for the Toronto District School Board, they have something whenever you end up having children which are small in stature, that there's a certain specific extra little bit of caring which they put towards the person. Generally, because if in the event that there is a fire emergency, we want to make sure that the person who is smaller in stature doesn't get pushed over or trampled on in the event of a fire exit. So, for the people inside their homes, it really comes down to pre-prepping and pre-planning, making sure that you end up having your cell phone ready to go outside at the time, making sure that you end up having your jacket, making sure you end up having a clear path of travel, allowing yourself, and if you're in a high-rise building, protect in place. You're safe within your 2-hour fire-rated condo walls. But if it's a home, listen to the early evacuation. Again, the most precious thing in this life is ourselves inside our home. Everything else can be replaced. Everything, right? So that's the key thing. Everything else can be replaced. So that's everything which I want to end up adding on that. I'm also going to open it up to Brian and also Josephine, if you're there, if you have any extra ideas or anything you want to contribute. I know they're wonderful presenters, which I have the fortunate ability to work with. So if you guys have anything else, if you guys want to chime in, it's up to you. Or if it's silent, then that's the end of our presentation.
That was interesting. Can I have a moment? Can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Hi. That was interesting what you just said about dwarfism and children in the schools.
Yes.
Okay, this would be approximately 60 years ago for me when I was in grade 1 and kindergarten. I was always carried out by a grade 8 student.
Right.
So that, you saying that brought that memory back to me.
Well,
And thinking, wow, so that's 60 years ago they were doing that.
See that obviously the principal or the school teacher at the time decided, oh, you know what, we have to set up a fire safety plan in place to making sure that everyone is safe. So that's kudos to that teacher and that principal.
Yeah, thank you. It was
Well, we get to talk today about it, which is wonderful. Josephine, did you have any extra points? I know that when I did the PowerPoint presentation before, you had a couple of really good points about the dryer you were mentioning. Remember?
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. When you were talking about the lint that accumulates in the dryer that can be flammable, I just came across something interesting about essential oils and how some people like to put a little couple drops of essential oils in their dryer to enhance the smell of their laundry. But certain essential oils can have a flash point that is lower than the temperature of the dryer when it's running.
Right.
And so certain essential oils can cause the contents of the dryer to catch on fire. For example, peppermint oil is quite combustible. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Wow.
Great. Awesome.
Anybody else?
No, I think that's it. Well, thank you very much for having us. We had a great time.
Well, so did we. Thank you very
The
much.
hose, the
Thank
garden
you.
hose. Yeah,
Oh,
don't even bother. Like
Yeah, Brian.
the smallest
Brian,
hand lines that we have are putting out about like 400 liters per minute of water. Yeah,
Mhm.
close to that. Just yeah.
So
I don't have
Brian, wait,
my mic's not working.
yeah, so Brian, what you're saying, your volume is your hero that's helping you here. It's the large volume of water that's really allowing you to put out the fire, correct? Yep. Great.
Sorry.
Great.
Can
Awesome.
you hear me?
There you are.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. My mic's working. Yeah, so I just wanted to add with the if you're using your own water line, the amount of water is nothing close to it. The smallest line on the from a fire truck is putting out just under 400 liters per minute of water. It takes a lot of water to put out a fire. A lot of times, a lot of water damage. So the best thing to do is just get away from the structure. You don't want to inhale any of that smoke. Even a single whiff of the smoke can overcome you for sure. So yeah, the best safety method is just getting away, staying away, keeping everybody safe.
Great, thank you. Okay.
So much for saving my own home.
I think that's everything. I'm assuming.
Great. Okay, well, again, thank you very much for this presentation. It's learned a lot of things, and the specificity with respect to dwarfism, I think, is important as well. So, again, thank you very much, Captain Abballe, and the crew that you brought with you. So
yes, as I said before, I'm very fortunate. I've got a great crew that works with me, and we're working hard to get out to all the schools, to all the seniors' residences, to Toronto community housing buildings, trying to get out the message. And for me, my dad once told me, it isn't work if you enjoy what you do. So for me, I'm not working today. I get to meet, fine people from across the country, and I'm very, very lucky to be here. And thank you for putting up with me and my long-winded explanations about everything. And I'm very, very happy to be here. And also, Alan, if any of the people in the presentation have any type of question whatsoever, fire me off an email. Get my email off of Alan, and sure, I have no problem. As you can tell, I'm a quiet person. I have no problem talking, especially about something like this, which is important to so many people. So again, thank you from all of us for us to allow to join you today for this, and we had a wonderful time today.
okay, great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank
All right.
Thank you,
Bye, everybody.
everybody.
Mhm.